The Le Mans 24-hour race opens in brilliant sunshine.
For days before the race, the pits are the scene of great activity, and nowhere are they busier than in the Jaguar pits, for Jaguars have a proud record in this great endurance test.
The fans' eyes are also on Mike Hawthorne, Tony Rolt, and the other Jaguar drivers. 125 miles an hour. British Jaguar forces its way into the leading pack. Here's Peter Walker in his Jaguar. The speed's terrific, and already records are being broken.
This is a battle that's going to go right down to the wire.
The Jaguar roars home 10 miles ahead of Moss & Collins' Aston Martin.
Morning, afternoon, and thank you for joining me for a full review on the Jaguar. I've covered just over 600 miles in her so far, and I think that's given me ample opportunity to get to know the car and at least do a review as an initial overview of the car and my first impressions. So my car journey and in time love of cars started with a Wankel rotary engine in the Mazda RX-8. After that I thought I'd change it up and went for a twin turbo V6 in the Nissan R35 GTR. Then I thought, well, I've got to have a total change again, so I went for a naturally aspirated V8 in the TVR Cerbera, and I thought, well, I've got to make some sort of change again to keep that that excitement and that love for cars alive. So I stuck with the V8, but in the XKRS up front we've got the supercharged 5-litre V8. Now, if I had to find a criticism for the car, it would be that the exhaust sounds so much better. As a pedestrian outside of the car, you still get a really nice throaty roaring sound when you're inside the car, but it does just sound a little bit better when you're outside. But as you can hear, it still sounds really awesome from the cabin. So I'm currently in stop-start traffic, and city driving livability is really quite good. You are afforded all of the luxuries associated with the Jaguar brand. So yes, it is kind of their flagship model, with the RS being the top of the XK range. All of the creature comforts and the luxury is retained. You've just got that blistering speed and incredible soundtrack. In addition to that, visibility is really good. If you have the dial turned to just the normal drive mode, the gear changes are nice and smooth. The car can sort of predict what you're doing very well, and it's a really nice place to spend time. So you've got that thrill of starting it up on a Sunday when I'm going out with all of the different types of cars that I do, and we go for a hoon. But then if you are just going to the shops or nipping into town, you've got those creature comforts, and you're not worried about things like turning radius, the size of the car, etc. If you are thinking about investing in an XKR, you might, I don't know, care about the fuel economy. It's not something you buy these cars for, but it might be a deciding factor for some potential buyers. When I've got the car on dual carriageway, sat at 70 on a longer run, I start seeing the average miles per gallon sort of creeping up to 24, 25. So I think when you're on dual carriageway at a constant speed, you could realistically be getting an MPG of kind of 26, 27. And the car does, in most circumstances, kind of goad you to put it into sport, put it into dynamic mode, and really enjoy that kind of the oral sensory experience of the exhausts. So I mentioned sport and dynamic there. Let's just kind of touch on those and specify exactly what those mean. They are both found on the XKR, so they are common between the two models. The characteristic changes that you get when you select sport and indeed dynamic mode are subtle but significant in nature. When you select dynamic mode, one of the major things is the butterfly valves of the active exhaust open up at a lower RPM. So you've got butterfly valves in the exhaust that open up when you get to a certain point in the rev range. What they essentially allow, as you see on many other performance cars, is that you can limit exhaust noises at the lower RPMs without putting a load of restrictive resonators and catalytic converters and so on. Also in dynamic mode, the car will ensure that gear changes are as quick as possible. In normal driving mode without the dynamic mode selected, they are still prompt, but they're going to be a little bit more smoother, which I think is only advantageous when you are undergoing normal driving conditions. If you put it into sport, it will not change up for you. So even if you hit the red line, if you hit the limiter, it will not change up for you, which is really nice because you can predict what this car's going to do and you know you are in total control. Now, performance-wise, easily comparable to an AMG C63 or a BMW M4. Loads of power, you're never wanting any more power, it's just about what you can put down onto the road at any one time. Me and a lot of my friends in the past have always run the Michelins, the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's, and the Pirelli P0s have got a bit of a reputation for promising more than they can deliver. They are what was on the car as this came out of the factory, and I've got to say, they really do hold the road really nicely. Front end grip gives you loads of confidence in the twisties, and the rear end, although you have to kind of feather the throttle like I said and read the road conditions at that time, you are able to put the power down. The interior is a brilliant place to spend time, really gorgeous, and really unique to this car and the XKR range actually. In addition to all the luxuries you get with the XKR, you also get these really nicely bolstered, heated leather and carbon fibre leather effect seats with the complementary blue stitching and blue piping. The number of ways you can adjust them is essentially infinite, so you are guaranteed to find your ideal driving position. The steering wheel is also electronically adjustable, and you've got memory settings on the chair settings, so if you did have one for more aggressive driving, more relaxed driving, or if you and a partner are jumping in and out of the car, you've got a manual setting and then three kind of set memory settings that you can revert back to at the touch of a button. The sound system is really good. I mean, I came from a TVR where the acoustics are awful, and no matter what sound system you had in there, it was never going to sound brilliant. But the Bowers & Wilkins surround sound system in the XKR-S is absolutely superb, really enjoyable experience listening to music. It is a little bit bright, which is the fancy way of saying the treble is a little bit invasive, but if you have a little bit of a play around with the settings and get it to how you like, the clarity is absolutely awesome, and I do think that the audiophiles out there will really enjoy it. Having said that, how often are you going to want the music blaring when you've got a soundtrack like this? Coming into a sharper corner here, I changed down good second, brakes are really good, confidence inspiring even when they've got a bit of temperature on them, and then you can pull away out of the apex really smoothly with confidence in those Pirelli P0s. Brakes are a little bit squeaky now that they are warm, but they are absolutely doing their job and give you plenty of confidence on the more spirited drives. Front end grip is really good, chassis balance is really nice, and you can come out so quickly out of the corners. Now in my short ownership, the car does get a lot of attention for being so unique and different in its styling. So what makes the XKR-S so special and indeed grants such a price premium when these came out of the factory? For the first buyer, you're looking at about £101,000–102,000 after being fully spec'd. So all around the car, we've got slightly more aggressive styling. We've got a front carbon fibre splitter and a rear carbon fibre diffuser, which really brings out the features of the car and just adds a little bit something different without going overboard on the carbon fibre. Also plenty more vents. So we've got the bonnet vents, which the XKR has, but unique to the RS, we've got the slit vents where the bonnet meets the front bumper, and then also on the front bumper you've got the Nürburgring developed, fully aerodynamically active side air scoops, I would call them, which really add a little bit of width to the car and make it that little bit more aggressive over the XKR. Now also we've got the gorgeous 20-inch wheels unique to the XKR-S with slightly wider profile tyres on the back to try and manage that increased power output, which is hyped up around 30 brake horsepower from the XKR. After extensive testing and research and development on the Nürburgring, they also had a complete overhaul of the suspension, so different springs and slightly more aggressive and sporty damper rates to suit the application of the XKR-S. In terms of modifications, there are a few things that you can safely do with the XKR and RS. The biggest one and the biggest bang for your buck being the supercharger pulleys. So there are a few independent companies that can change the ratios of the supercharger pulleys to give a little bit more airflow and therefore power, certainly slightly lower down in the power band. Now, running costs on the XKR or the RS are really not too bad. It's really going to come down to who and what you've got local to in terms of specialists. The Eaton supercharger, by all accounts, anecdotally, is really reliable and is very rarely what goes wrong, if anything, with these cars. But just remember, the supercharger belts will need to be done at the larger service. Now, the boot is a really good size actually, and owing to the fact that there is no spare wheel, you can take off the first floor of the boot to reveal a little bit more space. The seats in the back are relatively unusable and will be reserved to baby seats and amputees, so maybe the NHS could use these, but family of four probably not. But what that means is you will have ample space in the boot for bags for a week or even a fortnight away. Now, one question that does keep popping up from people that stop me and ask me about the car at petrol stations or my friends at the car meets is, why don't you see more of these if they are so gorgeous and unique? Well, I think a potential buyer who's looking to go into a car of this class and category asks themselves sort of a set of questions, and it just seems like the answer to those questions never quite get you to this car. They kind of just pull you in the direction of the BMW M4, or they pull you in the direction of the Jaguar F-Type, or one of the rivals, the contemporary rivals, like the Aston Martin Vantage. Now, the RS certainly is a big car, and some people might prefer the more compact, nimble nature of the F-Type. I'd certainly recommend driving both, but even on smaller country lanes like this, the car really comes into its own. Let's just have a little listen. good temperature, brakes really inspire confidence, front end is really grip, coming out of the apex of the corner, accelerate, loads of torque, back on the brakes, a little bit squeaky now that they are warm, but they are inspiring loads of confidence. Again, round the corner, out of the apex. Also a nice centre console storage cubby with the USB and the old iPod type connectivity for the music. You have got Bluetooth connectivity for your phone, so you can access all your contacts and make phone calls through the sat-nav screen, which also controls the heated seats, heated steering wheel, and all of the air conditioning, but you cannot stream music via Bluetooth in this car, unfortunately, which seems a little bit behind its time, considering these came out in 2011. In addition to the handling tweaks that I mentioned earlier, we've also got stiffer suspension uprights on the XKR-S. Now, when you turn the transmission dial to sport, we also get a sharper throttle response, and the car will let the active differential know that you might be wanting to have just a little bit more fun, so it will give you a little bit more leniency and a little bit more slip, but it's a little bit like that geography supply teacher. You know you've got a little bit more of a scope to cause mayhem and mischief, but it will eventually rein you back in if it thinks the headmaster is coming round. So it will eventually save you by cutting power to the rear wheels if it thinks you're gonna, for example, leave the road spinning backwards into a ditch, which is nice. Right then folks, I will end the video there. I will do a more in-depth review later on, but hopefully that's given you a good initial overview of the car. So far I've absolutely loved it. Right, I will see you next time.